an industry player. It all depends on you, though, so get that face ready for the small screen.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We're going to go ahead and get started in a moment. Testing, can everybody hear okay? Okay, so just a reminder to members, since we do have folks on the line, to speak clearly into the microphone. Madam Clerk, are you ready?
Fine, Madam Chair. This is Austin.
Hi, Austin, thanks.
Yep, it's coming in very clear.
Okay, great. So we will go ahead and get going. I believe we have everyone. Now, call to order. Special meeting of the Anchorage Assembly. I think let me test the microphone again.
Yeah, your mic is funky.
How's that? Are we okay now? Okay, I'm just going to start over. I now call to order this special meeting of the Anchorage Assembly. It is Monday, October 3, 2022. We are scheduled from 1 to 2 p.m. today. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Allard.
Here.
Mr. Solt.
Here.
Mr. Perez Verdilla.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Mr. Rivera will be joining shortly.
Mr. Cross.
Here.
Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Ms. Zalatel.
Ms. Zalatel is excused.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Here.
Mr. Voland.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Dunbar, would you read the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture of appreciation for the past and present indigenous stewardship of the lands that we now occupy. It is an actionable statement that marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. The Anchorage Assembly would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you all for being here today for this special meeting. We have one item on the agenda, emergency shelter plan items for action and appropriation. Before we take up the items related to that item, I want to address a couple things, and I will also be reading a statement from Member Rivera. So first, I want to address some questions that were raised regarding noticing of potential meetings this weekend. On Friday, in conversation with the municipal manager, it became clear there were some potential issues with enacting the emergency shelter plan that might require a special assembly meeting to resolve. Assembly leadership took action to notice a potential weekend meeting. The October 1 and 2 meetings listed on the municipal meetings were tentative in nature. No assembly meetings were held over the weekend. As we worked through the issues on Friday, it became clear that assembly action could wait until Monday. I called a special meeting for Monday, October 3 at 1 p.m. today. On Sunday, when muni.org was restored after a critical outage, the Assembly online calendar and public notices were updated to reflect this Monday meeting time, and an agenda was published on the municipal meetings page. So again, apologies for any confusion. Second, I will be reading a statement on behalf of Member Rivera. Before I do, I want to acknowledge all the work Mr. Rivera has been doing. As chair of the Assembly's Committee on Housing and Homelessness, he's been a bridge between the Assembly and the administration on this issue. He's been working nonstop to find solutions to homelessness and emergency sheltering in our community. I am grateful to Mr. Rivera for his compassion and steadfastness in addressing these issues. Mr. Rivera was supposed to be on a brief 2-day vacation this weekend. That didn't work out as planned. Again, many thanks to Mr. Rivera for his ongoing work on this issue. So here is a statement from Member Rivera. Thank you to my colleagues and the administration for making time for this meeting. I know that things appear chaotic on the surface, and in truth, there is a fair amount of chaos as we implement the Assembly's emergency shelter plan. That is, in large part, why we are meeting today. As many have seen, the Department of Law put out a memo which seemingly lays out a variety of issues we need to overcome in order to use the former Golden Lion as housing during this upcoming winter as part of our emergency shelter strategy as defined in Title 16. I am confident we can overcome all of the issues highlighted by the Department of Law if the administration is willing to work with me and my colleagues to help us cross these roadblocks. At this point, and without having yet had more conversation with the administration, I think it is incumbent on us to come up with what I've called an interim plan to meet our emergency shelter needs until the former Golden Lion comes online as housing. This interim plan includes leasing out and operating 50 rooms out of the Alex Hotel as non-congregate shelter. For members of the public and my colleagues, think of this as similar to the current usage at the Aviator. The interim plan also includes an unfortunate increase in the census of the Sullivan Arena from 150 individuals to 200 individuals. If there was an easier and, being totally honest, politically viable alternative, I would use it. These two pieces are, to reiterate, interim in nature until we get the former Golden Lion online as housing. I look forward to fruitful conversations with the administration and Mayor Bronson regarding this issue. I hope Mr. Gates or Mr. Falsey can speak to the rationale of why we are doing this cleanup resolution today. The third leg of the stool we have before us today is the first of what might be multiple items regarding the former Golden Lion as housing. It is simply an ordinance for introduction, but I would invite Mr. Gates or Mr. Falsey to speak to this item and why it is necessary before it is introduced for the benefit of the public and the members. I am about to take off from Seattle to my flight back to Anchorage and will be unavailable for the remainder of the meeting. I am hopeful that Assembly leadership will be able to assist members with any other questions you have, but do know that these measures we have before us today are vitally important. I alluded to this earlier, but this body should expect to continue seeing a hopefully much slower stream of items come before it regarding emergency shelter. Most items will be surrounding the former Golden Lion as housing as I work with the administration and Mayor Bronson to take the necessary steps to turn this valuable asset online. There may also be some other cleanup items because, as I said at the beginning, this has been a somewhat chaotic process, and we are doing our best to make sure everything we do is process-wise, kosher, and easy for the administration to implement. And finally, you will also see an item dealing with safety, cleanup, and other services necessary to mitigate impacts at the Sullivan Arena. To end, a question to the administration. Beans Cafe notified the administration today that it was withdrawing the offer to provide emergency cold weather shelter. This is due to the increased insurance requirements that were recently enacted. As a result, Beans Cafe is now enabled to provide the scope of services necessary. In the question to Ms. Demboski, Ms. Johnson, Mr. Trombley, will the administration temporarily, if not permanently, waive the insurance requirements to allow Beans to begin working to provide emergency cold weather shelter? And that concludes Mr. Rivera's remarks. If possible, he'll be joining. Otherwise, he is excused from this meeting. And I will turn to the administration if you would like to respond to the question concerning the insurance and Beans Cafe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amy DeBoski, Municipal Manager, for the record. The insurance requirements are standard industry standard. I understand there has been some shift in contracts throughout the municipality, not just for sheltering, but throughout the municipality. I don't have the details of those right here. I wasn't prepared for that. But I will tell you the municipality, the insurance that we require, not just of Beans, but any vendor, we strive for it to be standard and consistent with industry standards. So at this point, I just have to get more information. But we do have other vendors that have attained the requisite insurance that's required by the municipality. So again, I don't have those specifics in front of me, but I'm happy to look into it for you.
Thank you, Ms. Demboski. Next, we will move to the item of business 4A, emergency shelter plan items for action and appropriation. There are 4 items with one attached to another, and we will be taking up those items first. We will need to lay them on the table. Madam Clerk, would you read those items into the record? And then afterwards, I will be asking members for a motion to lay them on the table.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm reading these items in the order that we received them in an email, so there is no specific order here because the items are so similar and they're unnumbered. It's important that everybody keeps them in order. And then my last caveat is that my font is about 0.8 that I'm reading it from. So please be patient with me as well. The first item is unnumbered AM regarding Alex Hotel. Subject, sole source contract with AK Happy Time LLC DBA Alex Hotel and Suites to lease 50 units at the Alex Hotel and Suites for non-congregate housing, Anchorage Health Department, $711,000. The second item is unnumbered AO and attached AM, designating Golden Lion for emergency shelter, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly permitting the property located at 1000 East 36th Avenue, formerly known as the Golden Lion Hotel, to be designated on a temporary basis as emergency shelter as part of the municipality's emergency shelter plan, confirming the designation of facilities as emergency shelters and ratifying the reappropriation of not to exceed $1,217,000 previously appropriated for adult emergency sheltering and the appropriation of not to exceed $1,216,000 of alcoholic beverages retail sales fund 206000 fund balance to the Anchorage Health Department to be used for emergency sheltering. I've lost my place in my tiny font. Both as approved in AR 2022-293 as amended and appropriating an amount not to exceed $1,102,500 of alcoholic beverages Retail Sales Tax Fund 206000, fund balance to the Anchorage Health Department to be used for emergency sheltering. Unnumbered AM regarding Alex Hotel operations. Subject, sole source contract with vendor TBD to operate leased non-congregate housing at the Alex Hotel and Suites, Anchorage Health Department, $391,500. And the final item is unnamed numbered AR regarding Sullivan Emergency Shelter, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending aspects of the emergency shelter plan adopted in AR 2022-293 as amended, and approving a capacity of 200 clients at the Sullivan Arena when it is used for emergency sheltering in accordance with Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 16.120. And that is all of the laid on the table items, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. May I have a motion to lay these items on the table?
Move to lay on the table.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Cross to lay these items on the table. It has been seconded by Mr. Peterson. Seeking unanimous consent. Is there any opposition to the
I
motion?
object.
Okay, we will go ahead and take a vote. And Ms. Allard, do you need in the queue, you had mentioned there is something you may wish to speak to?
Yes, and if this could resolve my objection.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Allard.
Thank you. I wanted this to be directed. I don't know if Ms. Christensen is in the room.
She is in the room.
Okay. Ms. Christensen, my question is that our Assemblywoman Meg Zolotel is excused from the meeting because she has a clear conflict of interest. So how can I vote on something that will benefit an organization that she is director to? Does this make me legally liable for voting on something that could benefit one of our fellow Assembly members?
Go ahead, Ms. Christensen.
Through the chair to Ms. Allard. I don't see any way in which you could be legally liable for Ms. Alatel's conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. My objection is withdrawn, Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. And I want to state very clearly for the record that Ms. Zalatel has followed the process and procedures per the code and is recused and excused from participating in this meeting and the items before us today. Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess for starters, I'm still absorbing all of these documents, but I don't see any appropriation here for the coalition. So I don't see a clear conflict to begin with, but that's just my personal opinion. My question is, we've really tried to lessen the amount of documents that we are laying on the table, and it's only appropriate when there's no other option. And well, I shouldn't say no other option. I think the language in the code is something, urgent or needs to happen immediately. So can whoever is positioned to do so please describe? I think it's obvious why this is an emergency, but I don't fully understand the plan well enough to know actually why it is. So could someone please describe why these need to be laid on the table today? Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn Davidson. And we will go ahead and start with Assembly Counsel. Mr. Gates, would you address the timing regarding why these items are before the Assembly today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will do my best. As I guess your statement and conveyed from Mr. Rivera at the beginning is things seem rather chaotic. So yes, we are scrambling to get documents, compliance with code and our procedures all in place. Thank you. Let me know if any trouble hearing. And so I guess I would just speak briefly to each document one at a time here. And if I've got the order correct, the first was the ordinance that's introduced and its accompanying AM. We had, I guess, well, this has several elements to it. Generally, there were some concerns expressed, legal and practical concerns from a Department of Law memorandum sent to the mayor and all assembly members last Friday. And so this ordinance is intended to address some of those concerns by allowing the Golden Lion to be designated as emergency shelter. It's not changing its use under Title 21. It's letting the emergency shelter plan in Chapter 16-120 allows any facility that's not a homeless and transit shelter, it's just any facility to be used as an emergency shelter when the emergency shelter plan is activated. This isn't designed to address some of the legal concerns that were expressed. I think that it's safe to say that the Senators may agree to disagree on some of the points and conclusions of the memorandum, but what we're trying to do is make this as little of a mess as possible so that we can get the goals accomplished. Another part of this is during the meeting were also concerns expressed and I guess identified by our OMB specialists, and they have a sharp eye for these things. The appropriations that were made at a special meeting September 26th, and you may recall that allowed some of these elements in the plan to be put into place and activated and funded. There's like two, I guess, interpretations of code. One is resolutions can be set for public hearings that the Assembly determines, and another is that resolutions for public hearing for appropriations are required to follow the same procedures as for ordinances. And whether that procedure includes the 7-day advance public hearing or not is somewhat debatable, I think. But this ordinance is designed to, instead of making that an issue going forward, to just cure that issue as soon as possible by an ordinance that's noticed 7 days in advance of a public hearing that ratifies the funding that was approved September 26th. And so that's in this ordinance sections, excuse me. 3 and 4. I'm sorry, sections numbers have changed in the past several hours, so I want to get that correct. And then section 5 here is a new appropriation, and again, it sort of rather than wrangle with legal and OMB over public hearing requirements, we've inserted here in this ordinance introduced today for public hearing more than 7 days after introduction. And this would appropriate over $500,000. Here it's $1,102,500, and this is related to 2 more pieces that are before it's the AAM's approving contracts for the Alex Hotel and additional units to be used as part of the emergency shelter plan. And then section 6 is simply direction to the clerk. So all of these various documents will be tied together in a legislative history when people are researching how we got ourselves out of this mess, which I think would be very helpful. So, so that's the ordinance. I guess maybe I should pause if there's any questions about that first item or.
Ms. Quinn Davidson, did you have any specific questions on the item that Mr. Gates reviewed? And hopefully that was a sufficient explanation for why that item is being laid on the table.
Yeah, that was helpful. I don't want to get too into the content. I think that I'm just trying to figure out the urgency, but the content is also helpful for later discussion. And by the way, there's an echo. We can hear ourselves when we're speaking. So if you're able to turn that off, that would be great.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn Davidson. Mr. Gates, is there anything you want to add regarding the urgency of addressing the other items today?
Well, I think that the urgency is really because winter is coming and the weather's getting cold. I believe the sponsors here, and Mr. Rivera, our chair of our Housing and Homelessness Committee, simply wants to act quickly so people aren't left in the cold. So we're trying to do this here early October rather than late October when we sometimes have snow on the ground.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. And I will just go back to Mr. Rivera's comments about coming up with an interim plan, which includes leasing out and operating 50 rooms of the Alex Hotel as non-congregate shelter. So just to remind members, the motion before us is the motion to lay these items on the table. Next in the queue is Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the ordinance, I believe, only requires 3 people to introduce. But at this point, I'm unlikely to support a motion to lay on the table for the other items. I need to hear from the administration. So if the ordinance passes on Tuesday, will that resolve the legal issues for the Golden Lion and allow you to turn it on as a facility? And I need to hear from the municipal manager, whoever else is authorized. If the legal issues are resolved, do you intend to use the Golden Lion? And that ties to, I noticed that none of these items are from the administration. They're from Member Rivera. So what is the administration's position on really any of these? Do you consider yourself co-sponsors of these 3 resolutions from Mr. Rivera?
Go ahead, Ms. Dombowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, Mr. Dunbar, I would say on Friday, just to give you context, I contacted the chair and let her know that some of the funding sources that were identified by the Assembly were actually inadequate and didn't have the money there that the Assembly thought was there when they did the appropriation. So we worked through that. We also identified potential notice issues since some of it was laid on the table and then taken action. There was a public hearing right away. So we weren't sure if there was notice issues or not. So those were some of the issues that we had. We also identified in the AM that was passed that it had been identified as a sole source, which in fact, we actually did a market-based analysis. So we actually went through a competitive sort of process. Purchasing can talk to that more directly if you need that. So we recognize there needed to be some cleanup things that needed to happen in order to execute all of these things. But for example, the Covenant House stuff on AM 5/30/2022, it was an inadequate funding source. With respect to the Sullivan Arena contract, Henning won that contract. Only 1.217 million was able to be encumbered because there was not 1.5 million available. So there needs to be another funding source for the 283,000 to make that contract complete. So we went ahead and executed a partial contract of 1.217, which we could certify that was in that account. So with respect to that, I can tell you those were some of the issues that we had. We were still able to execute the Sullivan, get it online on Saturday. And we do have clients there staying there now. With respect to the other things, I think I'm going to let Mr. Trombley take it from there as it's more in his wheelhouse.
Sure. Through the chair, Mr. Dunbar, if you could restate those 3 questions, I want to make sure I'm going to answer all of the ones I can.
So will the ordinance that's being laid on the table resolve the legal issues necessary to turn on the Golden Lion? And then is it the administration's intention to use the Golden Lion if the legal issues are resolved? And then there are these 3 resolutions as well. Is the administration co-sponsoring these? Do you want to pass these as well, or are these simply coming from Mr. Rivera?
Yeah. In regards to your last question, we're obviously just now seeing them. One of the things that we've consistently said is that we want to be deliberative in what we're doing. And so we'll take a look at them and before making a commitment on whether or not we're going to co-sponsor them. Legal issues, I'll let Municipal Attorney's Office address that. But in regards to the use of the Golden Lion as a homeless and transient shelter, I'll have to go back and we'll have further discussions in the administration on that. But I do want to say that I know that this is a tense situation, but one of the things that the administration, I think, and the Assembly do agree on is the need for housing. And one of the things that the Assembly mentioned in regards to the Golden Lion last Monday when they passed the resolution was that shelter is not a solution, that housing is a solution. And so I just wanted to emphasize that the administration is absolutely agreeing that we need to find housing. Obviously, turning the Golden Lion into a homeless and transient shelter, which is what it's going to become. if in fact it would be used in that capacity, because that's how it can be immediately used. But we just want to emphasize that housing is a solution and sheltering is not. But I'll be happy to provide that commitment to you after I have a further discussion with the administration.
Can I ask a follow-up, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, but before we move on to Ms. Christensen, because I'd like to hear your thoughts on the ordinance and the legal issues. So I think we heard through the media, and so we haven't, I don't know if there's been a formal communication that the administration wants to increase the allowed population at the Sullivan Arena from 150 to some higher number, whether it's 200 or 300. But we don't have a resolution from you in front of us for that. So when were you going to ask us to do that, and in what form are you going to ask us to do that? Or has the mayor declared, or will he declare a civil emergency to do it unilaterally?
Through the chair, Mr. Dunbar, from my understanding, there's been no discussion as far as declaring a civil emergency. That request would come at some point. Obviously, the contractor that the assembly chose, Henning, requested to increase capacity at the Sullivan by 300 from 150 to 300. Honestly, we really wanted to work with the assembly before just throwing out resolutions and making requests. We wanted to know what the assembly thought through some sort of special meeting or work session.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Thank you, Mr. Trombley. Before I go to Ms. Christensen, I just want to note too that the items before us include 2 assembly memorandums concerning the Alex Hotel, one for lease, one for operations, a resolution concerning the emergency shelter plan, and then the AO with the AM attached, which would be for introduction, which would require 3 votes to introduce and set public hearing for. Before I go to Ms. Christensen, Mr. Constant, very quickly.
Yes, thank you. I want to be really clear that we're not talking about homeless and transient shelter, which is 16.125. We're talking about emergency homeless sheltering, which is 16.120. It's easy to confuse the two. They are 2 distinct things, and I understand that the administration is attempting to suggest that under Title 21, that's the rules, but that's not, in fact, what we're talking about here. Again, we're talking about 16.120. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant, Mr. Trombley, and then Ms. Christensen.
Sure. I think Ms. Kirsten may be able to express this more elegantly than me, but under 16.120, when it identifies other allowable uses, it actually pinpoints to Title 21 the definition of a homeless and transient shelter. So that is the only other allowable use under Title 21, along with the current designated use.
Oh, thank you. And that would demand that we amend the code when we take this ordinance forward to make it clear emergency shelter is different than homeless and transient shelter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Christensen.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Dunbar, I just wanted to respond to your question. Right before this meeting, me and Quincy Arms, another attorney in the municipal attorney's office, briefly sidebar with Mr. Gates. And so I think our intent is to kind of take all this in and then meet with Mr. Gates tomorrow or Wednesday to try to hash through all the issues and make sure that we understand exactly what's going on. Because as I think that you're hearing here today, the municipal attorney's office opinion was only, a lot. I referenced this last week. We made some educated guesses as to what we thought was intended by the documents provided, but all we can do is make educated guesses. So a lot of the previous ARs and AMs regarding the Golden Lines mentioned housing instead of emergency sheltering. And so we were just trying to provide as comprehensive a legal opinion as we could at that time based on the words that we were seeing. But given all these documents, I think our intent is to meet with Mr. Gates in the next day or so and go over any potential issues we see.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. And Mr. Dunbar, you had a follow-up?
Yes. So for Ms. Johnson, or whoever could answer, how many people are currently in the Sullivan Arena?
Through the chair to Mr. Dunbar, as of this morning, we had 103 people.
103. And do you expect that number to exceed 150 this week?
I wish I had a crystal ball. Through the chair to Mr. Dunbar, I wish I had a crystal ball. As of right now, we know that the remaining people at Centennial have expressed that they will not be going to the Sullivan Arena. We are still actively working boots on the ground there to try and convince people as it is getting colder. Personally, I think that if we can get everyone who's in Centennial to move to Sullivan, there will be a need for increased capacity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'm not likely to support laying any of these on the table. What I'm hearing is the administration, they do not agree that this resolves the legal issues at the Golden Lion. They don't make any commitment to the Golden Lion. They aren't requesting an increase to the number of people using the Sullivan. This is a member of the assembly, again, sort of stepping in and doing that. But I need to see much more buy-in from the administration in order to go forward with any of these things. And as they said, they are not yet requesting that we increase the number of people at the Sullivan Arena. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. And we are still on the motion to lay the items on the table. Next in the queue is Ms. Allard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If this isn't relevant to laying the items on the table, just let me know and I'll stop speaking.
So Ms.
But
Allard,
my question
Ms.
is
Allard,
to Ms. Christian.
Ms. Allard, if you would pause, please. If you have another motion that you need to make, right now we are only speaking to the motion to lay the items on the table, so I can come back to you when we're on a different motion, or if you have another motion to make.
I guess I just wanted a little bit of clarification so I could come up with my decision whether to lay these items on the table or not.
Okay, so you're requesting information regarding the decision as to how to vote on the motion to lay these items on the table. Go ahead, Ms. Allard, with your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Christensen, we're about to vote whether to lay these items on the table or not. I just needed a little bit of clarification. Or even Mr. Trombley can answer. It appears on the AO that we're looking to lay on the table that it is adding to the regulation, or to me, it seems like we're taking away from Title 21. Was that what the muni attorney or the administration is saying, that we're taking away from what Title 29 or 21 allows versus adding to it?
And Mr. Gates would also like to speak to this item.
No, that's okay. I'm clearly asking the administration, though. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Christensen or Mr. Trombley?
Yeah, through the chair, Ms. Allard, could you rephrase your question? I'm having a hard time understanding exactly what you're asking.
I know, I'm trying. Let me think if I can do this different, Adam.
And actually, may I pause everyone for a moment? The clerk is trying to get my attention. Go ahead, Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please remember that the laid on the table items are the AMs and the AR that need a vote to be laid on the table. The AO can be introduced at any time. So there shouldn't be any discussion about the contents of the AO because it's not before the body.
Thank you, Madam
Okay,
Clerk.
then I'll rephrase it. Thank you. In regards to laying ARs with the Sullivan Emergency Shelter, according to Title 21 and any regulation, even with the federal government, you can always add to a regulation or a statute, but you cannot take away. Looking at any of this AR or the AMs, are we looking at taking away on the administration's point of view, or does it look like we're adding to? If you can't answer it, it's fine. I only got these a few minutes ago, so I'm a little bit, I'm trying to go through all the documents.
Sure. Through the chair, Ms. Allard, I really am happy to answer your question. If you could just give me one moment, Madam Chair, if that would be fine. Thank you. Through the chair, Miss Allard, from reading the ARs, there's nothing in here that changes Title 21. The only thing that one of the resolutions does is it does meet the requirements of under 16-120 that you can't have a homeless shelter of more than 150 clients without assembly approval. So one of them would bump from 150 to 200 at the Sullivan. But there's no change in Title 21.
Okay, that was the AO. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Are there any other members who wish to speak to the motion to lay the items on the table? Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to focus on the Alex Hotel portion a little bit from the administration. So have you been in discussions with the Alex Hotel? Do you support using the Alex Hotel in this fashion? Oh, and also, can we get a little more clarity on the Covenant House portion? So will this ordinance resolve the issue? It seems like it's somewhere we broadly agree that we want to fund the contract for for Covenant House, and for some reason the wrong funding source might have been identified. How do we get around? How can we resolve that? So my questions for the administration.
Through the chair to Mr. Dunbar, this is Blair Christensen. I can't speak to the Alex Hotel portion, but as to the Covenant House, I believe that the intent was that this fix any problems with what was passed last week. And from my cursory look, it does appear to fix those problems.
Well, I would just speak briefly. I was actually touching on adjournment, but I haven't got to the first one. So I can't speak to the funding string issue. I thought there was a floor amendment last week that was solved that already, but I can't really speak to that. But for the Alex Hotel, the 2 a.m.s are here because, as I understood it, the emergency sheltering plan approved by the Assembly was amended on the floor so that the Golden Line wouldn't have 125 units. It went down to 85. So there were 40 less units than the plan had wanted when it was proposed to accommodate. So adding the Alex Hotel fills that gap. That's why those are here.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you there, Mr. Gates? I think that's
Sure.
I think that's a misreading.
I'm not sure if I addressed it.
I think that's a misreading what we passed last week. We changed the language so instead of 85 people, it was 85 units, and we left flexibility. You could double up in those units all the way up to 150. I don't think that's the reason that we have this Alex Hotel in front of us. I think it's because the administration refused, for whatever reason, to go forward with the Golden Line. And so my question to the administration again is: do you support using the Alex Hotel in this fashion? And have you been conversing with them?
Point of order. And
What rule do you believe has been broken, Mr. Cross?
that's the rule. I
Or point
really
of
like where
information?
point of information. I really like where Mr. Dunbar's going with this, but I want to make sure we're not debating these prior to laying them on the floor. It sounds to me like we're having good conversations about whether or not we should vote on these or how we want to proceed. But the question is, do we lay these on the table to have this discussion? Not do we do this before we even lay them on the table? So maybe you can assist me. I would like
Mr.
to
Cross.
we either lay them on the table or we don't, then we discuss them, because I have questions as well, but I'm holding off until we get through this. Thank
Your
you.
point is valid, and I just ask members to hold off on getting too deeply in and only ask questions related to the decision surrounding laying these items on the table.
I guess I would respond to that whether or not I want to lay these on the table, sort of, I have to know if they are meaningless or not. And to know if they have meaning or not, I need to hear from the administration. So
That's my thought on this. You should vote no unless if you don't get your answers, or vote yes and then ask those and then vote no on it. So
that's right.
just
But that's
that
why
makes it kind of
I agree with
different.
you. I agree with you, Mr. Cross. It's unusual the amount of questions I've been asking at this portion, but it's because I I'm sort of uncomfortable with the way this has gone forward and the fact that the administration's name isn't on any of these items. So I don't know if they think these are actually urgent or not, or meaningful or not.
Mr. Trombley?
Yeah, through the chair, this is really to the whole body. In Mr. Dunbar, one you said was, is this fruitless? And I can promise you this, we are interested in working together to find a solution. We did just see these, but that doesn't mean that we're not willing to work with you to find a long-term solution. If these help find that long-term solution, then please lay them on the table so we can increase our due diligence. We can have better discussions, but I don't want you to think that any of this is fruitless by any stretch.
Thank you, Mr. Trombley. Do you have what you need, Mr. Dunbar? Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. I put myself in the queue. I want to note too that while we are committed as Assembly members, and I believe the record of our votes show this, to finding housing and a long-term solution, we also have to find a short-term solution to emergency shelter and an interim solution, which is what Mr. Rivera is putting forward with the Alex Hotel. Again, please keep in mind why we are here, and that is because the October 1 deadline of closing the administration's October 1 deadline to close Centennial Campground prompted actions on the part of the Assembly and the Emergency Shelter Task Force. And that is why we are here to consider laying on the table these 4 items. And the urgency surrounding that is, of course, the emergency shelter plan. And I am speaking in favor of the motion to lay these items on the table. Mr. Constant is in the queue. And I just want to call attention to time. We have 10 minutes left. Go ahead, Mr. Constant.
Thank you. It's really hard. We continue to find ourselves as an assembly body running in circles to attempt to come up with solutions when the administration literally says, we want to work with you, and then as soon as we put something forward, don't.
Hold, please, Mr. Constant. Was there a point of order? If so, whoever said that, what rule do you believe has been broken?
We're supposed to be talking whether we're laying this item on the table, and here we are again deliberating or debating what the organization, administration, or anybody else is doing. Can we either vote yes or no and get this out of the way? Everybody's violating the decorum right now or violating Robert's rules.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. To your first point, I agree members need to keep their questions very focused on the motion before us. I disagree with your second point that there is a violation of decorum. Mr. Constant, can you focus your question or comment on the motion related to laying these items on the table?
If a member wouldn't interrupt me, I would actually get to the point of why I'm speaking to how the administration is interacting with members of the Assembly. That relates to why this question is even being a hurdle to get it on the table. And so, if I'm allowed to proceed, I will.
Proceed.
So, at this point, to the administration, it's getting harder and harder to make an affirmative vote on any extraordinary action by this assembly because we act and we act and we act, and our acts are rejected and rejected and rejected. And so it's coming now to the point where the rope is getting short in the conversation. You have not shown up with a single plan that demonstrates your commitment to moving forward this effort, except to say, we will not do that. Now, you have acted unilaterally to shut the camp, that you acted unilaterally to create. I am shaking with rage with the fact that you cannot lead and you cannot follow. So pick a path. To my peers, I say, one of us sacrificed his vacation, sacrificed his time off after sacrificing weeks and hours and days, more than a month, to come up with a solution. Honor him with a vote to move this question forward. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Allard, was that you with a point of order? If so, what rule do you believe has been broken?
Yes, Mr. Constant went on a tirade and then comes in at the very end
Okay,
and says,
Ms.
"Please vote."
Allard,
I mean, come on.
Ms. Allard, your
No, Madam Chair.
point
you
has been
honored everybody
overruled.
else with their point of order, but
His
of course it
remarks
has.
have been concluded and they were germane to the motion. Seeing no other members in the queue, Madam Clerk,
No, they weren't.
were you in the queue? Go ahead, Mr. Cross.
Yeah, we got 2 minutes. Can we move to extend to 1:30?
Second.
A motion has been made
Second.
by Mr. Cross to extend to 1:30. It has been seconded by Mr.
2:30.
2:30.
2:30.
It has been
Apologize, 2:30.
seconded by Mr. Peterson, seeking unanimous consent. Any opposition to the motion to extend to 2:30? Seeing and hearing none, we are extended. Mr. Dunbar, on the motion to lay this item on the table?
Yes, I just want to be clear. You say this item, there are four
Or-
items. Which
Sorry,
item are we
all-
laying first?
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you,
call the
Ms.
question.
Hold on, please. Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. To lay these 4 items related to the single item on our agenda on the table.
I move to bifurcate.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Dunbar.
I would like to take, I guess it's, the word is bifurcate, but I want to separate. I want to vote separately on all 4 items. And I think we have to, because the one's an ordinance that only requires 3, and the other resolutions that require 8.
A motion to bifurcate to take up the 4 items under the motion to lay them on the table separately. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Cross. Is there any discussion on the motion to bifurcate? Seeing no one in the queue. Ms. Jones, would you conduct the vote on the motion to bifurcate?
Yes, Madam Chair. On the motion to bifurcate, Ms. Allard,
No.
Mr. Solt,
No.
Mr. Perez Verdia.
Yes.
I'm going to check to see if Mr. Rivera is with us. Mr. Rivera? Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Constant?
Yes.
Ms. Solotel is recused. Mr. Dunbar?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Voland?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved, 8 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 recused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Dunbar?
I move to lay the AO number 2022-XXX on the table and set public hearing for, it's the meeting of October 11th, your intention? The meeting of October 11th.
Second.
Oh, wait, hold
And-
on. Before you,
Go ahead, Ms. Jones.
Through the chair, the motion is going to be a motion to introduce. You don't need to lay this
oh,
on the
I'm sorry.
table.
I'm gonna move to introduce.
A motion to introduce the unnumbered AO has been made by Mr. Dunbar, seconded by Mr. Constant. Is there a third?
Third.
The third is Mr. Peterson. Public hearing to be set for the regular assembly meeting of October 11. Are there any motions to lay the remaining items on the table?
Move to remove the.
I move the AR.
A motion has been made by Mr. Constant to lay the unnumbered AR on the table. It has
Point
been,
of information. Point of information. Forrest, did you separate these? And it wasn't clear to me. Did you separate
So-
these three funding from the AO, or did you separate these in the force?
My intention was to separate all four into
Okay.
separate items.
Yep.
Then-
We are taking these up individually.
Thank you.
And so the item that has been moved to be laid on the table by Mr. Constant is the unnumbered AR regarding the emergency shelter plan. It has been seconded by Mr. Cross.
Thank you.
Mr. Constant, did you want to speak any further to the motion to lay this item on the table and why you believe
Thank you, Madam.
this item is urgent?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, speaking to the fact that we need to come up with a path forward, that there's a vacuum and that this is an opportunity crafted by our peer, Mr. Rivera, and it might be an imperfect solution. I believe that the urgency is the fact that we don't have an alternative plan, and I do ask that you support this motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the administration. So is it the AO we just introduced, or is it this AR that resolves the problem with Covenant House? And then I'll say, personally, I don't intend to support this portion, but will support the next two. But yeah, is it this item that resolves that issue, Ms. Christensen, or is it the AO?
I'm sorry. I meant to ask to speak to the need for this, the urgency for being laid on the table.
Go ahead, Mr.
I
Gates.
can't speak to whether it resolves the Covenant House issue.
I think no. I think the Covenant House. Let's see, the Covenant House issue is the Covenant House funding issue is what I was asking about.
Yes. This resolution, I don't think, says anything about the Covenant House funding issue. So
Okay.
we need a different resolution for that rather than reliance on this resolution. I would say, though, that when we say this is laid on the table and I guess urgent action is requested, is the emergency shelter plan adopted by the Assembly a week ago. It doesn't include Alex Hotel, so Section 1 amends that plan, adding the Alex Hotel, which are the other two items. In Section 2, the Sullivan Arena can only have 150 clients sheltered under the emergency shelter plan. And so, as we've heard, maybe within a week, it could have over 150 persons there. But you need Assembly approval according to the code to exceed the capacity of 150. And that's why this is before us today as a laid on the table item for urgency. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. A follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a question, but a statement speaking to the resolution. I'm sorry, the motion to lay on the table. I had not realized that this was the mechanism by which the other two AMs would get even discussion about the Alex Hotel on the table. So I will support this motion to lay on the table, but I will say that once it's before us, I intend to move an amendment to limit the capacity to 150 at the Sullivan. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Cross, on the motion to lay this item on the table.
I'm going to withdraw my request. I want to speak to it once we pass it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. I put myself in the queue and I would speak in favor of the motion to lay this unnumbered AR on the table simply because I think it is important to provide resources to the administration so the administration can act quickly to proceed with supporting the emergency shelter plan and coming up with an interim solution to this issue. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to lay the unnumbered AR on the table. 8 votes are required since this would be for action today.
Madam Chair, quick point of order.
Go ahead, Mr. Constant. What rule do you believe has been broken?
It's not quite a rule, it's a procedural question. Because I think we resolved the concern that was raised that these items need to move together, I would wonder if it would be appropriate to move to take up as well, amend this motion to take up the ands or to lay the ands on the table so we don't have to do this 3 times. If council says that's a viable move, I would like to make that move.
Mr. Gates, Ms. Jones on the question to amend the original motion to lay the resolution on the table to include the 2 AMs pertaining to the Alex Hotel lease and operations. Can Mr. Constant amend his motion? The clerk and assembly council have agreed, Mr. Constant, that you may amend your motion, and the seconder.
Through
Was it-
through the
Was it
chair.
repeat? Okay. Go ahead.
It's actually Mr. Dunbar's motion to lay these on the table and to lay the AR on the table. And it's Mr.
it
Cross's
was me.
second. I believe it'd be a new motion from Mr. Constant to lay on the table the AR and the 2 AMs. Does that sound correct?
Madam Chair, I believe I moved the AR.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. We are just conferring on our end to make sure we are procedurally correct.
Motion is gone. We've split it up. Okay. Through the chair, since we voted on the other item, we need a new motion. So if Mr. Constant would make a new motion, Mr. Gates and I appear to agree that that is in order.
Go ahead, Mr. Constant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Then if it has to be a whole new motion, I move to take up all 3 remaining items and lay them on the table.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Constant to take up the unnumbered AR along with the 2 AMs pertaining to the Alex Hotel lease and operations. It has been seconded by Mr. Peterson. Mr. Constant on the motion, and then Ms. Allard is in the queue. Go ahead, Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thank you. If the general concern has been resolved that the questions need to be moved, let's move them once so we don't have to do this 3 times.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Allard on the motion to lay the AR and the 2 AMs on the table.
Madam Chair, I can't cuss, so I'm just going to say this is quite the show. Can we just call the question? Can I do that? Because I've had it. Can we just call the question, please?
Ms. Allard has made a motion to call the question on the vote to lay the items on the table. Is there a second?
Yes.
Mr. Cross has seconded. We will proceed to a vote to call the question. If it is approved, it requires 8 votes. Then we will proceed to a vote on the motion to lay the item, the AR and the AMs on the table as a successful motion to call the question ends all debate. Madam Clerk? And for folks on the phone, we are just waiting for the system to catch up. Once it catches up, then Ms. Jones will conduct the vote on the motion to call the question regarding the laid on the table items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Allard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Salt?
Yes.
Mr. Perez Verdia,
Yes.
Mr. Cross,
Yes.
Ms. LaFrance,
Yes.
Mr. Constant,
While unnecessary, yes.
Mr. Dunbar,
No.
Ms. Quinn Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Voland,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes 9 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 recused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will now proceed to vote on the motion to lay the AR and the accompanying AMs pertaining to the Alex Hotel on the table. Madam Clerk, would you conduct the vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Miss Allard,
We're talking about the AR with the Sullivan Arena, just for clarification, correct? And the 2 a.m.?
That is correct. This is the motion to lay those 3 items on the table.
Yes.
Mr. Solt,
Yes.
Mr. Perez Verdia,
Mr. Perez Verdia had to drop. He is excused.
Mr. Cross,
Yes.
Ms. LaFrance,
Yes.
Mr. Constant, Mr. Constant dropped off. Mr. Dunbar,
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Voland. I believe he was on the call with Mr.
Hello?
Mr. Constant, how do you vote on the motion to lay these items on the table?
Yes.
We're at Mr. Voland,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
The motion passes 9 in favor and 1 recused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will now take up those items. Madam Clerk, does it matter? I believe the order in which we probably logically need to take those up is starting with the resolution. However, that was not the order that was read into the record.
You may take them up in whichever order you wish, Madam Chair. You can just call for a motion.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Ms. Domboski.
since the administration just got theirs, there might be issues with the funding certification lines. So we're requesting a 5-minute break just so we can get with all our finance folks. So if you guys pass something, we know there's money in that account.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. Is it your request to take a 5-minute break now? Okay, we will recess for 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to get started here in a moment. For members on the phone and members in the room, if you would take your seats, please.
We actually set it up that way. I was born in A, if that makes you feel better. My first name was Amanda.
All right, thank you everyone for your patience and hanging in there. We're going to go ahead and resume the meeting. First, I want to call attention to the time. We have 7 minutes left. Mr. Cross?
Move to extend to 3 o'clock.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Cross to extend to 3 p.m., seconded by Mr. Peterson.
I do want to note that at 3 I will have to leave. I have
Okay.
children that need to get picked up from school, so I'll have to leave at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Seeing no members in the queue on the motion to extend, seeking unanimous consent. Any opposition on the motion to extend to 3 p.m.? Seeing and hearing none, we are extended to 3 p.m. So we will go ahead and proceed to take up these items. I will read the first one into the record, and then I will ask for a motion. Unnumbered AR, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending aspects of the emergency shelter plan adopted in AR 2022-293 as amended and approving a capacity of 200 clients at the Sullivan Arena when it is used for emergency sheltering in accordance with Anchorage Municipal Code Chapter 16.120. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion.
Second.
A motion to approve has been made by Mr. Cross. It has been seconded by Mr. Peterson. Mr. Cross, do you want to go first?
Yes. I do have some questions regarding this. Obviously, it looks like we're looking to increase capacity. One of my concerns through the administration is, are we not going to be back again in short order asking for another raise? And on top of this, I mean, if we start at 150, now we go to 200. Are we going to be at 250? Are we going to be at 300? And do we have a phasing plan? I mean, it seems to me it's if instinctively we realize that some of the real estate that we have that we want to, that is potential homeless shelters or congregate shelters or housing facilities underneath, depending on how they're allotted, has more or less public appeal. And so do we have a plan in place that says these are our top priorities, we fill them, then we phase into a different one, and these areas that are the most contentious, these are our last resort when we've exhausted all our other emergencies. This allows us, as other places, as beds come available, you know, we're not pushing people around, we're not putting people in the Sullivan and then we're closing Sullivan again when it's at minimum capacity. Do we have a phasing plan, and is 200 enough? Thank you.
Through the chair to Mr. Cross, I do believe that we have a path forward. I think if the administration works with the assembly, we could get it down on paper, a cohesive messaging on that.
And just to follow up through the chair, Mr. Cross, this is Amy Domboski. I would say the contractor notified us, Henning, who's running the Sullivan right now, they notified us already that they see a potential need of 300. They've asked for that capacity limitation to be increased. And I think that goes to the heart of what you're saying, which is, are we going to be back here every other week saying we need 50 more, we need 50 more? What we do know is about half the people probably remain at Centennial Campground. A number of them have, the majority, as Ms. Johnson indicated, has told us they will not go into sheltering. So what we do know, though, is a number of people from other parts of the community, as soon as the Sullivan is open, have gone to that facility. So it has become a place where people know it's open. They know they can get sheltering. So what we have identified is, or what the vendor, Henning Inc. has identified is they do not believe the capacity of 150 is sufficient.
And just a follow-up statement, I understand we want more. It's also not fair to take a majority and stick them in one location. It's not fair to the people who live around there who've had to deal with the Sullivan Arena for the last several years. And as someone who rode along those bikes and took their kids to the parks, believe me, I was looking forward to seeing its reclamation and being it cleaned up. Now we know that's put on hold. But I guess I'm looking at a phasing plan that says we go up to 200 and then we fill these others. And then we only, even though we're approved up to 250, we only put another 50 or 300 or whatever that end number is if we filled these others. I would really like to see a strategic plan for allocating them that takes into consideration what's available, not sticking everybody in one place. So I'm reluctant to keep having these conversations. I'm not reluctant to have these conversations. I'm reluctant to start giving these increases without specific plan on where we're going to put people specifically. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Next in the queue is Mr. Peterson, then Mr. Dunbar, then Mr. Volan, and then Ms. Quinn Davidson. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And when I first read the title of this and I saw that there was we're going to increase the capacity from 150 to 200, so it was an increase of 50. My first thought was, well, this was going to be like a surge capacity increase. So for emergency cold temperature, 10 below or somewhere. And now I'm realizing that that really isn't the case and that you're actually expecting to have 200 there or possibly more than that on a regular basis. And so I would have no problem voting for this if the 200 was the additional 50 because of emergency cold weather temperatures. But keeping that many there permanently is a bridge too far for me at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I will go to Mr. Volan next, then Ms. Quinn Davidson, and then Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Volan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just retracing steps here, the administration brought forward a plan, a four-pronged plan. 3 of the 4-pronged plans were not even viable. So we decided to do the administration's homework for them. We convened a task force. The task force was vetoed. We overrode the veto. The task force did the homework. They came up with a plan that addressed capacity. I'm not going to support this, even in its current form. I'm not willing to go above 150 at the Sullivan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Volan. Next is Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think I share some of the concerns that Mr. Cross shared. And I guess I just want to hear from the administration. What is your plan? I'm not comfortable with the dynamic we have here, which is we feel that you're not doing anything or don't have a plan that's sufficient, and then we do it for you. And it really should come from you. And you all should say, this is what we need in the Sullivan. This is the census we have of folks. These are their needs. This is what we're going to do. And I guess it's just a plea to please do that, because that is your job and you should know better because you are working with these folks. And so we want you to bring forward plans and explain them to us so that we can approve them. And I guess I feel very uncomfortable with this dynamic of, Felix, who works so hard, and we do appreciate all of that work, but him coming up with a plan, it really should come from the administration. So without this document that we're voting on now, what is the administration's plan over the winter?
Through the chair, Ms. Quinn Davidson, I'm reluctant to say this, and I don't want it to be perceived by the assembly as an attack by any stretch, because that's not what I'm trying to do. We're in this position for a whole host of reasons. The administration came forward to the assembly a month before the mayor took office, and we asked for a navigation center of, I don't remember what it was, 1,000 beds. the mayor proposed a plan, and that plan has not come to fruition. We understand that there's a challenge, and being that was our plan and it was killed or put on hold, I'm sorry. At this point, we're looking for solutions, and the solutions that we want to do are something that we can all agree on. So we figured, you know what? Let's allow the assembly to come up with solutions, and we will vet them and provide the information back to them as whether or not that can work. We want to come to the table with something that we know will work in the long term, and this seems to be the process that's actually getting us moving in some direction. And so that's, and I don't want to relitigate the past. I don't. I really do want to move forward. You asked the question, so I'm providing that response. But again, it is in no way an attack. So we hope that what the assembly comes up with, that we can vet it and we can move forward with it in agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Trombley. Ms. Quinn Davidson, any follow-up?
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Trombley, for that. And I think we're all a bit sort of burdened and keep bringing up the past. And I appreciate that this is a current issue and it's a future issue. So let's try to turn our attention towards that. What I'm hearing you say is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that the administration is not at this point attempting to put together a plan. They are waiting for the assembly to put together a plan and then deciding whether it makes sense. And I don't mean that in an attacking way either. I'm just trying to understand, is it appropriate for Mr. Rivera to put together a plan, or is that not appropriate from the administration's perspective? And that's an honest question. So I think you're saying it's appropriate and this is okay, but I want to know what you think about that.
Mr. Trombley?
Through the chair, Ms. Quinn Davidson. Again, our plan is a navigation center. We don't have agreement with the assembly. We have to deal with a very real reality that, you got to count to, was it 7 now? And we can't count to 7 to get done what our plan is. So we're waiting to hear from the assembly on what they would vote on and what they would support. So to answer your question, this is very fruitful and it's very helpful for us to know what it is that the assembly wants and what they're willing to vote on to help the most vulnerable people in our community.
Can I follow up just one more time, Madam
Sure,
Chair?
go ahead, Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Yeah, I guess I would say to that, the navigation center is only meant to fit 150 people at this stage. And so we all, whether that's built or not built, we all have to figure out what are we doing with the other folks. And so I guess I would envision that the administration would say, oh, okay, months ago, you said 150 people, we get it, we're moving forward, and now here's the plan for the rest of the folks. But it just doesn't feel like that's happening. Or maybe your plan is the Sullivan for 150, or maybe it's for 200, or maybe it's for 300. And it just feels like I feel that I don't know what the plan is, genuinely. I don't know what your plan is. And I want to listen to what you all have to say and try to be in our appropriate respective roles. But it's difficult to to know what that is, to know what the plan is. So I think I'm hearing you say we don't have a plan outside of the navigation center specifically, and we will entertain options that the assembly puts forward. But again, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Through the chair, Ms. Quinn Davidson, I would agree with your assessment. Our plan all along has been a navigation center. That hasn't happened. We want to see what the assembly and the administration can agree on to get the necessary votes to get people the shelter they need so no one dies on the streets. Not only that, but we want to ensure that there's a long-term solution to the challenges that we face so that sheltering is not the only option, but we do find housing. We understand that there's nonprofits out there as well as a municipal response. And I think together with the assembly, with the necessary votes and the necessary funding, we can make a large impact this winter. So we do want to work with you on what you propose, and we will vet it out just like any other project. We will do our due diligence and provide you, the assembly, with the necessary information so that, and I've always said this as a former assembly member, when you vote yes or no on something, I view it as the administration's obligation to provide you with all the necessary information on your plan or on our plan so that you, when you vote yes or no, you feel absolutely 100% confident in how you're voting.
Thank you, Mr. Trombley. Thank you, Ms. Quinn-Davidson. I'm going to go ahead and move on because we only have 20 minutes or so, 23 minutes left, and I have a number of members in the queue. First, Mr. Dunbar, then Ms. Allard, then Mr. Constant, then Mr. Volan. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll say that, the Assembly passed a plan in May of 2021 that would have prevented this situation. It was disposed of by the mayor in July. And this is relevant to our current vote today because I think that there is, for me, it feels a little bit like Lucy in the football. If we pass this, I don't think... So when this body voted very narrowly to approve a navigation center in April, it was supposed to come with a variety of other things that planks were supposed to come forward. Turning on the Golden Line for drug treatment, a special populations shelter was supposed to be investigated. A variety of things were supposed to happen that didn't. And I am worried. And I'll say given that, even with the approval, the administration estimated they weren't going to get the navigation center. And it's not a navigation center; it's a shelter. A navigation center with nowhere to navigate is just a shelter. It was a large shelter in East Anchorage. They were succeeding in pushing the shelter from a wealthier part of the city to a poorer part of the city. That was what was going to happen, but it wasn't even going to be online until November. So it wouldn't have resolved the emergency cold weather issues that we see ourselves with today. I'll say with this, my concern with this interim plan is I fear if we pass it, it will become a permanent plan. I think that the administration will use this. These 200 beds of capacity now at the Sullivan Arena, they will maintain that through the winter. They will probably use the Alex Hotel, and they will not take any substantive steps to turn on the Golden Line, which had broad assembly support. And my evidence for that is the experience we've had over the last year, where we've had a variety of commitments made and then not followed through on. So I'm going to make an amendment to reduce in section 2, line 14, to reduce the number 200 to 150. If I could get a second there.
Second, Member Bowen.
Thank you. Yeah, and any conforming amendments, which I think line 6 on page 2 is one, and if there's any other places.
So before you go, Mr. Dunbar, a motion to amend has been made by Mr. Dunbar to change on line 6 and line 14, 200 to reduce it to 150 in those two places. It has been seconded, I believe, by Ms. Quinn-Davidson
Mr. Voland was also.
or Mr. Voland.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn-Davidson. Go ahead.
Both of us, I think.
If I could speak to that
Go
for a
ahead,
second.
Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you. I prefer this method to voting down the AR as a whole, because my understanding is that this AR is necessary to effectuate the Alex Hotel. I think there might still be some validity there and some flexibility needed there. We heard from Ms. Johnson, there are 103 people currently at the Sullivan Arena. I think it's logical to think that that number will increase. We have basically a week to resolve the Golden Line issues, and I hope that the administration will be working towards doing so as the ordinance comes before us. It has been my long position that you should not concentrate a great number of folks experiencing homelessness in one facility, both because it's harmful to them and it causes populations to be together that probably shouldn't be together, and it is, as we know, detrimental to the neighborhood in many cases when it's a congregate shelter versus housing. So I urge support for this amendment, and if it is amended, I will be comfortable supporting the resolution and the two memorandums. Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Dunbar. We have 19 minutes left, and I have several members in the queue on the main motion. Do any members want to speak on the amendment?
I will.
Is that Ms. Allard?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So my concern about lowering it to the 150 is that when we get 151, we're all going to have to come back, and it'll be the Assembly's fault that we can't put the additional body inside of the Sullivan. So I'm against it, but we've said no to the Navigation Center. We've said no to the Centennial. We said no to the relocatables. And in December of 2021, when we did buy the Golden Lion, when Mayor Bronson was running for office, and afterwards when we voted to say we can do the Navigation Center, and we wanted to make sure the Golden Lion opened, the administration never agreed to open up the Golden Lion. We've actually said no to every single plan that the administration has brought forward. So a few weeks back, I clearly said, you know, administration, just get out of the homeless business and let the Assembly do it, because in no way will we listen or invite the administration for any input on plans. And when we do invite them, we absolutely know that we're not going to agree to them. Right now, they're actually on board with saying, okay, we're going to do the Sullivan, at least that's what I'm reading into this. But we can't keep coming back. And instead, we're forcing the hand of the administration by saying we're only going to accept 150 individuals, our most vulnerable, into the Sullivan Arena. And we're forcing the hand of the administration, whether it's legal or not, I don't know yet, to open up the Golden Lion. That's what we're doing. So if we really wanted to work as a team, at this point, open the Sullivan Arena for, I mean, I could come back and amend Mr. Dunbar's amendment of 150, but it's going to get completely voted down. We're going to have 150, and it will be the Assembly's fault. I want all the community to know this, not the administration. Every single Assembly member who voted for 150 people, when there is one human being on the street, because there's nowhere for them to go in the Sullivan, it's the Assembly's fault. I'm a staunch no on the 150.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you,
Allard.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Dunbar, back in the queue on the amendment.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Allard reminded me of something that I should have mentioned and why we should support this amendment. This resolution is not being brought forward by the administration. We're not telling the administration no. This is Mr. Rivera's resolution. The administration has made no formal request of us to increase the size of the Sullivan. And one of the good things—
I know that. I apologize if you took it that way.
Well, okay, well, thank you for your apology. Please support the amendment. So,
Point of order.
Well, it's not to you. It's
Hold on,
the rest
please.
of us.
Everybody stop talking. There's a point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Constant. What rule do you believe has been broken?
Sorry, this is actually Mr. Boland.
Oh,
And
Mr.
I would
Boland.
just appreciate if the member who currently has the floor, other members would not speak over them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Volan. I agree. Members, please refrain from speaking until you are recognized. Go ahead, Mr. Dunbar.
thank you, Madam Chair. So this resolution reiterates the fact that we are going to expand the number of beds at Brother Francis, Beans Cafe, Covenant House, and give potential to the Alex Hotel. And to me, that is a portion of the Assembly's plan that I hope the administration will agree with, the Alex Hotel only being interim. But the administration has made no request of us to increase the number of beds at the Sullivan. This is an Assembly resolution. If the administration requests a special meeting in 3 days or 5 days to increase the population of the Sullivan, I think we should definitely entertain that. But that is not what's happening today. And so I would urge my colleagues to support this amendment and go forward with what I hope is a very limited interim plan. And then we have a more long-term plan, or long-term in the sense of the rest of the winter, that we'll be able to vote on Tuesday when we resolve the legal issues of the Golden Lion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Ms. Christensen, and then Mr. Trombley.
Thank you. This is Blair Christensen. I just wanted to make a suggestion to the body. In Section 2 of the AR, it limits the 200 capacity to, it's will set to expire on December 31st, 2022. The body might consider shortening that timeline to sometime in October or November in an effort to get all the pieces working and to figure out the legal issues with the Golden Lion, to figure out the Alex Hotel, while also, since the Sullivan's already up and running, it would just give a little cushion for shelter capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. Mr. Trombley?
Through the chair, Mr. Dunbar, how would you like that request to be made? Would laid on the table item on the agenda? We're happy to provide a request. Is that what you would like?
Yes, Mr. Trombley. I would like an actual resolution or memorandum, whatever you feel is legally appropriate, that comes from the administration, not from Mr. Rivera. I'd like something with Mr. Bronson's name on it, frankly, because it seems like he's not here and it's never clear who is authorized to speak for him. And so we have Mr. Rivera again and again introducing things that we are voting on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Gates?
I just wanted to speak to the amendment that's under consideration right now. Some conforming changes to make it whole would be deleting in the title all the words on line 3 and approving the capacity of towards the end of the title, and then deleting section 2. Our municipal code already limits it to 150 clients, so you don't really need to do any action by the assembly to keep 150 in place. But I guess for the plan, 150, then page 2, line 6 makes good sense. And I think also page 1, line 37 at the bottom should remain below 200. And it could delete that or just leave it in place. It's not really of any effect, but I just wanted to mention the conforming changes that Mr. Dunbar asked for.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. And just for clarification, it is your recommendation that Mr. Dunbar include line 3 in his amendment. Is that correct?
Well, his motion, if I remember how it was worded, said and conforming changes. So I've just put on the record what those would be if we were going to do them.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. And the clerk is nodding that the and conforming changes includes line 3. Next in the queue, and again, I want to point out the time. We have 10 minutes. I understand Mr. Cross has a hard stop at 3 p.m., but I believe we will need a motion to extend again. I have Mr. Constant and Mr. Volan in the queue on the amendment. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. I do appreciate the proposal suggested by Ms. Christensen, and I put myself in the queue. A member laid blame on the assembly, and a member of the administration suggested that 30 days before the administration that we have now took office, they put forward a plan. And I'm just here to say their escalating plan reached $30 million before we said, no, this isn't a plan, this is an idea. And we're still struggling to get to the point where we have a plan. And a plan includes an actual description of the services, the budget for the capital and the operations, and a funding source. Until those elements are in front of us, which Mr. Rivera has again attempted to do here, we don't have a plan. And so please come forward with a plan so that we can move to the next phase of this conversation. But I am strongly in support of Ms. Christensen's framework. Well, okay.
Thank you, Mr.
I hear there are some challenges with this plan. What's the capacity issue? Anyhow, I'm going to step out.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Volan?
Hey, thank you. Yes. So I think it's hard to argue that the Assembly has not been proactive when it comes to homelessness. We forward funded our emergency response for cold weather. We made sure that 130 something more people weren't out on the street with helping close the sale for the guest house. We appropriated funds for the United Way landlord partnership program. You know, the NAB Center, I know we kind of keep coming back to that, but as has been pointed out, that still doesn't have capacity for the 350 people that currently we're trying to get sheltered and get housed before winter. And so I guess my question on the Golden Lion piece we kind of keep hearing reasons for why it won't work. Some of those reasons I think have been kind of dubious. The transportation project excuse, and then we're hearing about needed repairs to smoke detectors, other monitors, toilets. So again, the administration is asking for the assembly to come up with a plan. I feel like roadblocks are kind of being thrown in the way of that plan. If repairs are needed, have any of those repairs that were pointed out as being necessary before we bring the Golden Lion online for housing, have those repairs been started, and when will they be completed?
Thank you, Mr. Volin.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Volin. Through the chair, this is the municipal manager. I don't have that punch list in front of me right now, but I can certainly get in. I'd be happy to email that to you.
Okay, have any repairs been started at the Golden Lion that were pointed out in the memo that we received from the administration?
Point of order.
Hold on, please. Go ahead, Mr. Cross.
I am curious about what Mr. Volin has to say, but I want to make sure we speak to the amendment. We need to make sure we're focused on it because time is of the essence right now. And I apologize, Mr. Volin. You have excellent questions, but if we can stay on topic, that would assist us a lot with time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. I agree and believe that we need to go ahead and vote on the amendment.
So I think the amendment is increasing capacity, or rather is reducing capacity to the Sullivan. And so I think that's pertinent. All parts of the plan kind of have to come in there.
Mr. Volin, is the answer to the question regarding the Golden Lion then relevant to your vote on the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Can the administration further respond? And then actually, could I get a motion to extend? We're down to about 6 minutes.
Move to extend till 3:30.
Second.
Motion to extend to 3:30 has been made by Mr. Peterson and seconded by Mr. Dunbar, seeking unanimous consent. Seeing and hearing no opposition, we are extended to 3:30. And I understand, Mr. Cross, you'll call in. Okay, thank you, Mr. Cross. And going back to the administration, if you would address Mr. Volin's question, please.
Through the chair to Mr. Volin, this is Alexis Johnson. So we did a walkthrough last week of the Golden Lion with the sole source contractor and with members of the M&O department. We did a walkthrough, identified the problems, I should say surface level problems, but we did say that we were going to actively work to get those resolved. I can get you information from the M&O department to see which ones have been resolved or if they have started work there, but they do know the problems at hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Volin, any follow-up? Mr. Volin? Okay, we appear to have lost Mr. Volin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. No follow-up.
Thank you. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to amend the unnumbered AR to change on lines 6 and 14 and in any other conforming places or make any other conforming changes to reduce the capacity at the Sullivan Arena from 200 units or number to be sheltered to 150 individuals to be sheltered. Madam Clerk, would you conduct the vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Allard on the amendment.
No.
Mr. Solt.
Yes.
Mr. Perez Verdia. I believe he's still out.
He is excused.
Mr. Cross.
He will
Mr.
be
Cross.
dialing in shortly.
He is not dialed in yet. Ms. LaFrance.
Yes.
Mr. Constant.
Yes.
Mr. Dunbar,
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Voland,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
and Mr. Cross.
No.
The motion passes 7 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 recused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We now have the main motion, the approval of the unnumbered AR as amended. I had several members in the queue to speak to the main motion. I'll go back through it. First, Ms. Allard, Mr. Constant, then Mr. Volan. Ms. Allard on the main motion as amended.
No, I have no comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. I'm considering an amendment that says that the capacity expansion, the plus 50 is allowed when there is a sustained capacity of 90% for 5 days and all other facilities are full. So I guess I would make that motion. We can discuss it briefly. If
Is there a
there's
second?
Could he repeat the motion, please?
Second, for purposes of discussion.
Mr. Constant,
Madam
would you
Chair?
repeat the amendment, the proposed amendment?
Thank you. Yes. That the additional 50 capacity is available when there is a sustained capacity of 90% utilization for 5 days at the Sullivan Arena and all other facilities are full.
Mr. Cross, I'll second.
And I think I should be clear, all other low barrier facilities.
Okay, so the amendment, which has been moved by Mr. Constant and seconded by Mr. Cross, proposes to add where in the resolution? What is the line, Mr. Constant? Would that be
I'm sorry,
in section two?
I'm pacing. Let me walk over to my printed document.
Section 2, perhaps?
Madam Chair, I just want to note for you, I have a hard out at 3:30 as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
If
Dunbar.
I may, that's line 21, page 2, section 3.
Line 21, page 2, to add the additional 50 capacity is available where there is a sustained capacity of 95%. Did you say?
90,
90% of 90% for 5 days at the Sullivan, and all other facilities are at capacity?
all other low barrier facilities.
And all other low barrier facilities are at capacity. Mr. Constant?
I made a mistake. It's section 2, line 14. I'm sorry.
Okay, the proposed language would be inserted under section 2, which line again?
14 for the 200 clients is activated.
Okay, so on line 14 where it says, where we have amended to state to 150 clients, when it is activated as emergency shelter, is that, I'm not clear where you want to add this sentence. In the middle of the sentence or at the end of that sentence on line 16?
Yeah, I would say after when it is activated as an emergency shelter.
Okay, to be inserted on line 14 after the comma. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Constant, on your proposed amendment.
I just want it to be really clear if there is any shelter expansion there, it's based on all of the other facilities generally being used and this one being up near capacity, not as a convenience.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Cross on the amendment.
Yes, I like the way that Chris has worded this. I think it gives us emergency buffer. At the same time, it works towards making sure all the other places are being utilized and that the Sullivan Arena is not the main focus for housing. And so I support this. I think it's the closest thing to a phasing plan we can come up with on short notice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Mr. Peterson on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just wondering if Mr. Constant was thinking that this would be used for emergency cold weather sheltering when it's 10 below zero. Is that what your intent is with this amendment?
Mr. Constant?
Well, I think, yeah, ultimately it's whatever you want to call it. We are entering a period of sustained cold weather. And so it's just the simple reality that we're facing that they need some flexibility somewhere. And I, again, want it to be utilized not as the bed of first resort, but when all other facilities are in flux.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Thank you, Mr. Constant. Seeing no other members, go ahead, Mr. Dunbar.
Yeah, I'd like to make I move to make an amendment to the amendment, adding the terms, and the mayor has declared a state of civil emergency. Can I speak to the amendment?
Is there a second to the amendment to the amendment?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Peterson. Go ahead, Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If members recall, the mayor declared a state of in the previous administration. The mayor declared a state of civil emergency. I believe it was 2018 or 2019. After 2019, after some severe budget vetoes cuts at the state level that forced a similar shortage of beds. And so I would like, again, I feel this constant pressure where the assembly is being asked to sort of shoulder coming up with a plan and the administration is saying, well, our hands are tied by the assembly. I think if you require that the mayor also declare a state of civil emergency in order to trigger this, I think we will have buy-in from both branches of government to make this only a temporary shelter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. And I have just been advised that Mr. Salt has to drop at 3:15. Seeing no members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the amendment to the amendment, which would add at the end of the language proposed by Mr. Constant, the statement, and the mayor has declared a state of civil emergency. Madam Clerk, would you conduct the vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Could I have clarity, Mr. Dunbar? Oh, Mr. Peterson, you seconded the amendment. Is that correct?
The amendment to the amendment, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ms. Allard, on the amendment to the amendment. Ms. Allard? It looks like Ms. Allard is no longer on the phone. Mr. Salt? On the amendment to the amendment?
Yes, ma'am. I vote no.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Constant?
I think no.
Mr. Dunbar,
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Voland,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
The motion fails with 6 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 recused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are now back on the amendment. Seeing no members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the amendment to add to line 14 in section 2. The additional 50 capacity is available where there is a sustained capacity of 90% for 5 days at the Sullivan, and all other low barrier facilities are at capacity. Madam Clerk, would you conduct the vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Miss Allard. Miss Allard appears not to be with us. Mr. Salt.
Yes.
Mr. Cross.
Yes.
Miss LaFrance.
Yes.
Mr. Constant.
Yes.
Mr. Dunbar.
I could do what some of my colleagues did and just drop off the phone and refuse to take a vote, huh? I'll say yes.
Miss Quinn Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Voland.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
The motion passes 8 and 1 recused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are now back on the main motion, the motion to approve the unnumbered AR as amended. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to approve the unnumbered AR as amended. Madam Clerk, would you conduct the vote, please?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I should have gotten the queue. May I please speak to this?
Mr. Dunbar, it is our procedure, once the item has been called for a vote, not to recognize members to speak at that point. So we will proceed with the vote.
Miss Allard on the AR as amended. It appears that Miss Allard is not with us. Mr. Salt.
Yes.
Mr. Cross.
Yes.
Miss LaFrance.
Yes.
Mr. Constant.
Yes.
Mr. Dunbar.
Yes.
Miss Quinn Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Voland.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
The motion passes 8 in favor and 1 recused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We now have before us the first of 2 unnumbered AMs pertaining to the Alex Hotel lease sole source contract with AK Happy Time LLC, DBA Alex Hotel and Suites to lease 50 units at the Alex Hotel and Suites for non-congregate housing, Anchorage Health Department, $711,000. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion to approve has been made by Mr. Peterson and seconded by, I believe, Mr. Voland. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Gates is first in the queue, and then I'll go to you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Peterson.
Chair. I wanted to suggest that an assembly member move to make an amendment here. The Department of Law identified this and requested a change that I concur with. The word housing used in this document should be instead emergency sheltering, and the word should be changed in 3 places. Page 1, line 5, in the title. Congregate housing should instead say non-congregate emergency sheltering. and then line 10, housing, and line 13, housing. Each instance it should say emergency sheltering.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Is there a member who is willing to move that amendment?
Oh, I'll move that amendment. This is Mr. Peterson.
Is there a second?
Cross, second.
Mr. Cross seconds. And again, the proposed amendment would change the word housing that is used on lines 5, 10, and 13 to emergency shelter. Motion made by Mr. Peterson, seconded by Mr. Cross. Seeing no members in the queue on the motion to amend, Madam Clerk, would you take the vote, please?
Miss Allard. She is still out. Mr. Solt.
Yes.
Mr. Cross.
Yes.
Miss LaFrance.
Yes.
Mr. Constant.
Yes.
Miss, oops, sorry about that. Mr. Dunbar.
Yes.
Miss Quinn Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Boland.
Yes.
And Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
That motion passes 8 in favor and 1 recused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are now back on the main motion as amended. Mr. Peterson, as the mover, do you want to speak to that motion?
I actually think we should continue to move forward with this. We're running low on time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Dunbar is in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I will likely support this, these funds, but here's how I expect this to play out. Given Mr. Constant's amendment to the last resolution, given the administration's position on the Golden Lion to this point, I fear that this interim plan will become a permanent plan. They will use the Alex Hotel. They will surge the Sullivan. They will do so without the mayor ever making any firm commitment that he is the one doing that, but that's what they'll do. And then they'll say, hey, we don't need the Golden Lion. We own this hotel, but we're going to use these vastly more expensive, more temporary options instead. I think that the mayor will do that because he is beholden to donors that have made him promise not to use the Golden Lion. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that the hotel that we own will be utilized in a plan that gets us through the winter. Because this is an interim plan and a short-term plan. It should not be the permanent plan or the plan throughout the winter. And I hope that we are able to resolve this issue. And I'm going to once again put some faith in my colleagues in the administration by voting for these funds. And I hope I'm wrong about what this winter is going to look like. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. And just a reminder to members, please refrain from speaking to motive. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed. Yes? Go ahead, Ms. Demboski.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was hoping that Tamaya from the health department could come up and speak to this particular thing, but I was advised previously by council that both this AM and that AM and the next AM, both of them actually wouldn't be able to be loaded into the budget and effectuated until the AO passes on October 11th. But I think with respect to the amount that's being appropriated, I don't believe the amount necessarily reflects what the actual cost may be. And I think the health department can speak more eloquently to the nuances that may be important to members as you contemplate voting. Would that be okay?
Yes, we can go ahead and hear from the representative of the health department. I just want to call attention to time. We do have just 14 minutes left. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Tamaya Liebersbach. I'm the administration manager at the Anchorage Health Department. So this sort of goes to both this AM for the actual lease of the rooms at the Alex Hotel and the AM for the basically the operation and supportive services vendor. We would really prefer to have time to work directly with the Alex Hotel and to also do a quick open market procedure to identify a vendor who would provide the operation and supportive services at the Alex Hotel. This would ensure that whatever goes forward and is approved by the assembly is an accurate budget that reflects actually looking at line item costs of the services. We're unsure as to where the budget for the supportive services that's around $391,000 came from. We want to make sure that whatever goes before the assembly and is approved is accurate to what the services actually cost.
Thank you. Mr. Gates?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add a comment to follow on what she said. These are two different contracts. One's for the lease of the units to AKA Happy Time. And as I think that this one could move forward, but, you know, depending on what she feels. But I think there's a problem with even approving the second one for supportive services for $211,000, because there's no identified vendor in this AEM. Our municipal code requires a contract for sole source procurement to identify a contractor. This does not do so. So I'm just advising the body that you couldn't really approve this and comply with the code. The way it's written here, I was going to suggest an amendment identifying the contractor. But, you know, I think it doesn't hurt for the leasing to be approved and in place. The approval still exists a week from today after the funding goes through. And the services contract, I'm not sure.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Thank you. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the unnumbered AM as amended pertaining to the Alex Hotel lease. Madam Clerk, would you conduct the vote, please?
Miss Allard. Miss Allard appears to still be out. Mr. Salt.
Mr. Salt is excused.
Mr. Cross.
Yes.
Miss LaFrance.
Yes.
Mr. Constant.
Yes.
Mr. Dunbar.
Yes.
Miss Quinn Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Voland.
Yes.
Mr. Voland.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
This item is approved, 7 in favor, 1 recused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have 10 minutes left in the meeting. And the final item to be considered for action is an unnumbered AM pertaining to Alex Hotel operations, sole source contract with, quote, vendor to be determined to operate lease non-congregate housing at the Alex Hotel and Suites, Anchorage Health Department, $391,500. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve. Second, Boland.
A motion to approve has been made by Mr. Constant. It has been seconded by Mr. Voland. Mr. Constant?
Nothing to add.
Ms. Demboski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to kind of follow up on what Dean had said previously, we believe, we had talked to Assembly Council about this in the Department of Law. We believe, just like we did with the previous Sullivan contractor and we worked with Mr. Rivera, we believe in the next 72 hours or so, we could identify a vendor through an open market procedure. Again, the health department has requested that we do that because then we can get an actual cost. The number identified in this particular contract award to exceed, I've been told, was an estimate. It was a guess, somebody's best guess. but it was not the health department's best guess. So again, the code requires you cannot pass a sole source contractor without a named vendor. We believe that because we can't actually effectuate this in its current form, it would not be in compliant with code. If the assembly were to postpone this item to October 11th, we could go forward with an open market procedure, and then we could get you a name of a vendor so you could plug it in on October 11th at your next meeting. And then I think that would resolve our issues.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. I want to note that we have been rejoined by Ms. Allard. Mr. Gates?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add one point in our code 71540 that requires assembly approval of contracts. When it's sole source, approval is required when it's 50,000 and above. If it's any competitive procedure, informal or so forth, assembly approval is required if the contract is 500,000 or more. So if in this amount, and that's in this AM 391,000, a contract can be executed without assembly approval if it falls below 499,999. But I guess the question is if the funding is available in the right account.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Is there any further discussion?
Madam Chair, can you just clarify? I apologize, what we're voting on?
Thank you, Ms. Allard. The second assembly memorandum, unnumbered AM, pertaining to the Alex Hotel operations, has been moved for approval. Mr. Gates, did you want to comment?
I apologize. I meant to say this at the beginning as well. This document also has the word housing in 3 places when it should say emergency sheltering. And I would strongly recommend an amendment to change it before this is voted on for approval, or a motion to postpone if there's time to do that. These 3 places are in the title, line 4, and the word housing, line 8, the word housing, and line 14, the word housing. All should be needed to replace that word with emergency sheltering. And again, this is at the recommendation of Department of Law, and I concur.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Ms. Allard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to postpone until 10/11, I guess October the 11th, so the administration can have time to find a vendor. I don't know if I can get a second.
Is there a second on the motion to postpone this item to the regular meeting of October 11th?
Second, Cross.
Seconded by Mr. Cross. Go ahead, Ms. Allard.
Just give the administration time to find a vendor, and then we can move forward from there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Is there any further discussion on the motion to postpone the item to the regular meeting of October 11? Seeing no members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion.
Madam Chair, hold on. I'm sorry, I got blocked.
Okay, I hadn't finished, so go ahead, Mr. Constant.
Yeah, so the kind of common sense assumption of moving this to postpone is that in the next 3 or 4 days, the Sullivan Arena will be at 200 people, and that's the end of the conversation. And so I'm not going to oppose this motion because we've already heard from the administration they're not going to be able to move the money until the 11th, and that it's their intent that this thing moves to the 11th either way. So we might as well show a good faith action again. And in the process, I'm flagging that 200 number is only for excess capacity and is not a goal.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Did you have a question?
No, that was just my testimony, if you will, my comment on this item and the vote that's before us.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. I had put myself in the queue just to briefly reiterate what Mr. Gates said, that given the the administration's intent to solicit a competitive bid. Per code, assembly approval is not required if the contract is below $500,000. So it is my understanding then that the administration can proceed with a contract for Alex Hotel operations. My question to the administration is, and we're down to 3 minutes here, do you expect that amount to be under $500,000?
Madam Chair, I can't answer that question. I'm not a subject matter expert, but I will tell you, as soon as we know who the winning vendor is and what the cost is, we'll make sure to coordinate with the chair of the Homelessness Committee for the Assembly and with you, Madam Chair, so you'll know how much that is in our path forward. At a minimum, we'll bring forward an A version that corrects the housing issue that you corrected in the previous AM, and we'll bring forward one that names the vendor with the right amount.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. Seeing no other members in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to postpone to the regular Assembly meeting of October 11 the unnumbered AM pertaining to the Alex Hotel operations.
Miss Allard.
I'm sorry, is this my amendment we're voting on?
This is the motion to postpone to October 11th.
Yes.
I understand Mr. Solt is out. Mr. Cross,
Yes.
Ms. LaFrance,
Yes.
Mr. Constant,
Yes.
Mr. Dunbar,
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Voland,
No.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
The motion passes 7 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 recused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This item will be back before the Assembly at the meeting of October 11. That brings us to audience participation. We have 1 minute left in the meeting. If anyone wants to come forward and speak very quickly, the meeting automatically adjourns when we hit 3:30. So please, if there's someone, please come forward, state your name for the record. Yes, go ahead. And then.
It's really grateful of you. Like, I'm grateful for your time today. I'm grateful for all of your guys' time today. I know we're all trying to solve this issue together, so I appreciate how hard we're at least getting this together. Like, let's just try and figure it out, please. That's all.
Thank you for your participation.
I hope that you guys have a blessed afternoon.
Thank you. We are out of time and adjourned.